All right, so everything in the world is just ridiculous. It's pointedly ridiculous, I would say. I mean, I'm no longer believing the things I'm saying. I feel like I am now lying to the public when I cover these things because we're just reaching levels of absurdity that are offending my sensibilities, right? First and foremost, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have hired former CIA agents with a proven track record of lying to the public, gaslighting the public to help her with PR. Also, they moved to do this within the same 24 hours that I started randomly getting attacked for my coverage of Blake Lively. Remember yesterday we talked about The Cut. We're going to speak about that again because that journalist has got some deranged ideas of her own. And then I just found out more about this very interesting background of E.J. Dixon. Also, the judge in Blake Lively's case just slapped down their psychopathic request for 2.5 years worth of every message that Justin Baldoni and Justin Heath and the PR agents have ever sent to everybody, plus location data. We knew that was going to happen. And we have obtained the audio of hotshot Ari Emanuel of WME, who describes himself as ride or die for the couple. And also great political news for those of us who are anti the never-ending war campaigns. J.D. Vance and Donald Trump just absolutely humiliated Zelensky in the Oval Office in front of cameras. And it is really glorious because I'm just so tired of funding everybody else's borders, man. Can we just get like cheap groceries? Like I said, a lot going on. So let's jump right back into it. Happy Friday and welcome back to Candace. All right. First, just a funny Friday story. Last night, my husband and I, we were sitting on the couch with our kids, and my eldest, he's just 4 years old, who is kind of starting to grapple, like ideas and logic are starting to form, and he's asking a lot of questions. And he looks at me and he asks, "Mommy, did you eat my brother?" And I said, "No, why?" And he said, "Then why is he in your belly?" It's just like... I was so tired. I just looked over at my husband and I was like, I am not prepared or well equipped to answer this question, but I just love his logic. He just thinks now he's like this ever expanding stomach and you keep saying my brother's in there. Like, did you eat my brother? It's just amazing. But I have to tell you, this toddler logic, it makes so much more sense to me, in my opinion, than Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' logic as it comes to PR and all the filings that they're doing. Because like I said, I don't even know what's real anymore. I don't even know where to begin, okay? But this is an actual headline right now in Variety. It reads that Blake Lively hires CIA alum for crisis PR in legal battle with Justin Baldoni. And there are a lot of implications here, and I love this story simply because it combines what I love most, politics and culture, and I want to explain a lot to you. We learn in this article that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have moved to hire a PR crisis manager with deep government ties. As her legal battle with Justin Baldoni escalates, she's quietly working with Nick Shapiro, the CIA's former deputy chief of staff and senior advisor to former director John Brennan. So this guy, high up, just about as high up as you can possibly get if he is the deputy chief of staff to John Brennan, who was the former CIA director, who makes me very nervous. So I'm going to tell you why. So apparently her legal team says, they've given a quote to Variety. They say, the litigation team for Miss Lively retained Mr. Shapiro to advise on the legal communications strategy for the ongoing sexual harassment and retaliation lawsuit occurring in the Southern District of New York. Okay, that's what Wilkie, Farr, and Gallagher, that's the excuse that they're giving to the public. So I'm going to slow this down to you and debunk that just in general, in case some of you guys are not up to date on the CIA's relationship with the mainstream media in general. Okay, so you should understand this before we draw the necessary conclusions from this really bizarre move. So it is a fact, an absolute historical fact that can never be wiped away, that the CIA, after JFK was shot in the 60s, put journalists in the mainstream media on their payroll. And they did this in order to control the narrative, right? Which is another way of saying to gaslight the public, to stop the public from asking certain questions. There's a lot of speculation that our CIA may have been involved in that assassination, but I'm not saying that. I'm saying other people are saying that. Wink, wink. Okay, so one of those journalists and publications that was put on the CIA payroll was none other than the New York Times, which was published at that time by Arthur Sulzberger. So the Sulzberger family are the ones that currently own and operate and have operated the New York Times for a very long time. And again, we're not in conspiracy land. This is right up on Wikipedia, pulling this up for you. We're looking at the entries for Operation Mockingbird. Like I said, you can look this up by yourself. This is not coming from Candace Owens. It's just a historical fact. And it reads here that in a 1977 Rolling Stone magazine article, the CIA and the media, reporter Carl Bernstein expanded upon the Church Committee's report and wrote that more than 400 U.S. press members had secretly carried out assignments for the CIA, including New York Times publisher Arthur Hayes Sulzberger, columnist and political analyst Stuart Alsop, and Time magazine. Okay. And so it just goes on to say that Bernstein documented the way in which the overseas branches of major U.S. news agencies had for many years served as the eyes and the ears of Operation Mockingbird. So you can look into this yourself. And again, I want to stress that the Sulzberger family still owns and operates the New York Times. And why is that relevant? Because there is absolutely no evidence that Project Mockingbird has ever been discontinued. But there is plenty of evidence to suggest that it's still ongoing, okay? Remember, I said to you, journalists behave like hitmen. We just watched this with the Justin Baldoni case. They just sort of take out, smear, and destroy the reputations of people that they don't like, or people perhaps that their clients don't like. But the question is, who do they do that on behalf of? Who does it benefit when they tell perfectly curated lies to get people really upset, to get the public very upset? Like I said, we know that the Justin Baldoni hit piece originated from Megan Twohey from the New York Times. And now we have news here that Blake and Ryan, who for sure gave that information to Megan Twohey of the New York Times, have opted to use a former top guy at the CIA for PR. So what is he doing for them exactly? Okay. Well, the Variety article goes on to tell us that Nick Shapiro, the former CIA agent, launched a crisis PR firm called 10th Avenue Consulting back in 2015 after a very long tenure in the federal government. Now, in case you're wondering, how does a CIA agent have any experience to just launch a PR firm? Well, remember, a massive part of the CIA's job, really the most important part of the CIA's job, is managing public relations, because we, the people, wouldn't agree to go to war unless they sold that idea to us. They need a crisis. They need to, look, 9/11 happened. Are you guys fearful? Okay, we got to go. Now we're going to go to never-ending war in the Middle East. They need us to feel emotions, to be angry, to be out of control, to acquiesce to sometimes our freedoms being taken away, or sometimes to being enraged and targeting our rage towards someone like Justin Baldoni and maybe agreeing that we should sign in laws. I don't know, whatever it is. If you're working for a firm and you're like, well, we want to get like SAG-AFTRA union done. We need the public fired up. Maybe you would hire one of these guys, right? Like I said, because otherwise, why would you want and agree to your sons going to fight a war? I think naturally we're all kind of averse to that. And I would, again, argue that 50%, therefore, of what the CIA does is public relations. So here's another thing that you should know, connecting this politically. Washington, D.C., shocking news, is massively corrupt. I know, you're like, what? No, I never thought that D.C. could be corrupt. Yes, it is corrupt. Republicans, Democrats, people in between, massively corrupt institutions, because we don't have term limits and they're there and they're just figuring out how to enrich their own pockets. They kind of forget about us once we send them to DC. And what you have a lot of times is that there are former CIA agents who keep their security clearances, meaning that they get to access the White House, they get to access national security intel, classified documents, because then when they leave their federal jobs, they can charge up the wazoo to become consultants, PR consultants if they'd like, to join legal firms, legal consultants if they like, in their federal afterlife. And they can, again, just be like, I still have access to the government, so you're going to want to pay me a lot of money. And so I'll give you an analogy, or actually an anecdote, not even an anecdote, a reality of how that can serve people. Hunter Biden's notorious laptop. If you are Hunter Biden and this laptop starts going viral right as your father is running for president, you're going to want to hire a PR crisis agency with perhaps security clearances to let you know ahead of time what exactly the government has if you're going to get charged for a crime, to potentially help stop that plausibility and to work within the government to lie to the public just long enough, right? We just need to gaslight the public long enough for my actions not to impact my father's campaign, right? And that actually happened. We all know that actually happened. First, you were told it was like Russian disinformation, and then they had to essentially go, actually, no, these are in fact photos of Hunter Biden smoking crack. And it's a weird thing to know that we were kind of gaslit and lied to. But there's this old clip that I want to show you, because way back when, because of the obvious corruption that can take place with these security clearances, Trump revoked security clearances of former CIA people, namely John Brennan. So remember, Nick Shapiro is under John Brennan. He's the director of the CIA. Trump at one point rejected John Brennan's credentials, his security clearances, because he's like, this is too much corruption. And I want to show you how much of a meltdown some former CIA agents had when they went on air. And they literally threatened this guy, Paris Denard, who was for explaining to the public that the CIA keeps their security clearances or former CIA members because it allows them to be corrupt. Okay, take a listen to this clip.
A lot of these people that have these security clearances, and this is the secret in the swampy Washington, D.C., they have them and they keep them because it's profitable for them after they leave government. Because if you have a security clearance, especially high-level security clearances, your contracts and your consulting gigs pay you a lot more money because of the access that you have. I hope the president continues to do this, and I hope he adds Omarosa to the list, because if she has a clearance, she too, because of her actions, should have it revoked.
Well, I don't know if I'd put Omarosa in the same category of the 75 people who signed those letters, but Phil Mudd, I imagine you want to react.
Profitable, Paris. When I am requested to sit on an advisory board, let me ask you one question. How much do you think I'm paid to do that at the request of the U.S. government? Give me one answer, and you got 10 seconds. How much?
I'll ask you a question. How much are you paid for your
Answer
consulting
the
and
question.
Contracting gigs? For being a
I have no
former
contracts
official.
with the U.S. government that pay money.
I'm not talking.
Zero.
And this is the thing.
When
I'm not talking
when
about
I'm
what the
asked to
federal
offer
government,
advice to the
Phil.
U.S. government,
Phil,
I
let's
get
be
paid
honest.
zero.
Phil, let's be
That's
honest.
it.
I'm not talking about your role with the federal government. I'm talking about the
who are you
contracts
talking
and
about?
gigs that
You
you
talking
get
about
from
General
being a
Hayden?
consultant and a contractor. The consulting firms that they form and that you all get is because you get more money when having a consultant for having the security clearance.
That
Stop
is
acting
incorrect.
like that doesn't happen.
I have
That's the
zero
truth.
consulting relationships with the U.S. government. Zero.
I'm not talking, Phil, that's a good talking point. I'm not talking about relationship with the government. I'm talking about in the private sector. When you have a security
I
clearance
have
and you
zero
keep it.
relationships with the private sector that involve my security clearance. Zero. I get $0 from consulting companies that deal with the U.S. government. Are we clear?
Well, I will be clear in saying that everybody in Washington, D.C. knows if you don't want to be honest about it, that's on you. But if you have a security clearance and you keep it, you get more money to have it.
We're done. Get out.
Phil,
It's not your show, so I'm
25 years
staying
in
right
the
here.
service, and this is
Don't
the
be
shit I
so
get.
defensive about
Get
this.
out.
Yeah, you only freak out when you're lying, right? You would be totally calm otherwise. But the purpose of showing you that clip is to essentially paint a picture to you of why somebody like Nick Shapiro, who Blake and Ryan have hired, might want to be launching a crisis PR firm after they leave the CIA. And he did hold on to his former security clearances. Now, he no longer holds on to those clearances because guess what? He lied to the public in a rather egregious way. He was one of the 51 former senior intelligence agents who signed that letter to gaslight us all in 2020, claiming that Hunter's laptop was Russian disinformation, which was just retrospectively an insane lie, an unbelievably bold lie. And then when that lie eventually fell apart, he had his clearance revoked. Again, I'm reading this from the Variety article. It says, quote, Shapiro is not without controversy. He was one of the group of 51 former senior intelligence officials who signed the widely cited and subsequently criticized 2020 open letter stating that the Hunter Biden laptop, quote, has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. And that, my friends, is exactly why Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have hired him, because he has proven that he is willing to lie without flinching, that he will straight up lie to protect his clients. He will lie to gaslight the public. And he has proven successful under that model because there are many people who took their word for it and thought, okay, this laptop, nothing in this is real, just long enough for it not to impact any election. Like maybe there are some people who would have voted differently. Who knows? We can't go back. But it shows you who he is. It tells us what we should know about his character, which is essentially that he has no morals. And so this is a terrible look for Blake and Ryan Reynolds, but these two seem to be very intent on making every wrong move, in my opinion. Like they truly believe they are too rich and too connected to have to face any responsibility for their lives. They're just going to hire people who are more immoral than them to handle it, to just make it go away. So it's now extremely, by the way, interesting to me that I suddenly got contacted at the same time by both New York Magazine and their sister publication, The Cut, by their senior writers, which I told you about yesterday. In one of the most blatant hit pieces to happen to me, I would say actually this whole year, it was pretty blatant, rather egregious. And I told you guys about this yesterday, but I want to expand upon it because more information has come to the forefront. The writer, E.J. Dixon, contacted us under the guise of an agreement, pretending that she was just interested in how my podcasts have gone viral on the Blake Lively situation. And so I agreed to this phone call because I don't really care about the smearing and libeling anymore. I think everyone left and right is kind of waking up and we're fracturing our trust with the mainstream media. But then the conversation got really weird. So first I just want to read this sentence that came out of it to show you how dishonest she was. She wrote, on her live stream, she's talking about my past extreme views that have led people to disavow me. She writes, on her live streams and her social media, she has equated the Jewish religious practice of Kabbalah with pedophilia, nodded to medieval Blythe level conspiracy theory that Jews ritualistically slaughter Christian children. It's a complete lie, and has referred to some of the historically documented atrocities of the Holocaust, such as Joseph Mengelé's experiments on twins, as bizarre propaganda. So she writes that, and it's fascinating that she asked me these questions, and I gave her such concrete answers to debunk these lies in the media, and she chose not to publish it because her job was to smear me, not to clarify any of the smears that have been written about me. But that part about the Kabbalah was really interesting because on the phone call, she suddenly gets very weird, and she's like, I read on the ADL's website, I couldn't find a source for it, but I read that you think Judaism is for pedophiles. And I said, you couldn't find a source for it because I've never said that. I was like, that would be foolish, absolutely foolish. I'm Christian. What are the first 5 books of the Bible? It's Judaism. I was like, of course I never said that. And she said, so do you think they mischaracterized your statements? I said, no, I think they outright lied. And then she starts asking me about she's like, what about the Kabbalah? And I said, well, I can clarify for you what statements I did make, and I can give you the names of the authors, the Jewish authors that I read. I was referring to Sigmund Freud, who created all of these like sex theories regarding children. And I read 2 books. I read a book by David Bacon, who is he is passed away now, but he was a Jewish professor who taught at Harvard, the University of Chicago, and he wrote a book about Sigmund Freud and the Jewish mystical tradition. And then I told her, and more importantly, is this Jewish Harvard graduate, Jeffrey I'm saying his middle name wrong, Moussaif Masson, who wrote this really incredible book that is a part of our book club. We're going to read it this year, called The Assault on Truth: Freud's Suppression of the Seduction Theory. And I said, no one, in my view, has more authority to speak on Sigmund Freud than this guy, because he was hired as the assistant director, soon to become the director of Sigmund Freud Archive Center. He worked with Sigmund Freud's daughter, Anna Freud, was very close to her. And while he was working at that center, he learned German so that he could read Sigmund Freud's notes that had never been released to the public. And he basically discovers while reading this notes that Sigmund Freud had created these theories not because he actually believed that children were attracted to their parents, but because he was covering for pedophiles. Like these children were actually being assaulted by their parents. And I told her this on the phone. I literally said, here's the book, here's the author, and here are the people that have connected those dots for me. And I think we need to go back and discuss Sigmund Freud. And she didn't include any of that in the article. She just republishes the lies, which is amazing, but it's going to get even more amazing. So then I'm like, I'm pregnant, okay? And I decided that I had time to just kind of obsessively, all I like to do is research this writer, because why would you just outright smear me when you could have just clarified what I was speaking about and included what I said. And I find this article, you guys, of what really perturbed her about this Sigmund Freud thing. And it's an article that she has published, she had previously published, regarding her childhood friend who was convicted as a child molester. And I'm going to read from it directly because I think this is really important for all of us to recognize who are the people that are in control. So she's publishing an article saying my views are just so contemptible, and here's what she thinks, here's what she still thinks. And now I'm going to read you her views. This is a first-person article that she published in Kashmir magazine. She wrote a few months ago, upon looking at a former elementary school photo and doing a cursory Google search of former classmates, I discovered that a former childhood friend of mine, who I'll call Sam, a boy that I hadn't spoken to in more than 10 years, a boy who used to zip to school on his Razor scooter every morning, a boy who went to my bat mitzvah, is now a convicted child molester. Partly out of morbid curiosity and partly out of an attempt to reconcile the floppy-haired boy that I once wrote NSYNC parody lyrics with and the person that he turned out to be, I spent many late nights combing through his court documents. I learned that he had molested his half-sister, a girl I remembered as a baby in her pretty mother's stroller on multiple occasions. I learned that he was part of a child porn file-sharing community, and that the feds busted him at his mom's house. He is currently serving a 5-year sentence at a penitentiary in Texas. The rest of this article is not spent speaking about his victims or speaking about his sister. It's then spent trying to convince the readers, and I'm going to read it verbatim because I don't need to take her out of context here, that the problem is that we aren't trying to find solutions for him, for the person who molested a child and victimized other children via child pornography. The article is entitled, "Could Child Sex Robots Cure Pedophilia?" Like robots that look like children that would allow pedophiles to get out their frustrations. She wrote, I thought about earlier this week about Sam when I came across a Forbes piece about child sex robots and how they could potentially be used as a therapeutic tool or an outlet for pedophile sexual desires. She then quotes a person named Ron Arkin, who's the director of a tech lab, who says that childlike robots could be used for pedophiles the way that methadone is used to treat drug addicts. She then, going back into her first person, says, in recommending that this future technology be used in a controlled research setting, Arkin's cautiousness is understandable given how quick our society is to demonize pedophiles, as well as demonize those who suggest any mode of treatment for them short of execution. She then says, the aversion to discussing the potential reality of child sex robots is also understandable. Without a doubt, the idea of pedophiles having the opportunity to have wide-eyed, pigtailed child sex dolls sent to their homes the same way one would a bag of groceries or a bunch of books off of Amazon is incredibly horrifying. But in reading my former friend's story and in reading the stories of other pedophiles, as well as This American's Life's segment, I've become convinced that we need to stop getting caught up in our knee-jerk reactions to adults having sex with children. She literally writes this. Like, the problem is us. We need to stop getting caught up in our knee-jerk reactions to adults having sex with children, however despicable we might find it, and start focusing on rational solutions. When we talk about pedophilia, which is defined as a predominant attraction to prepubescent children, we need to get two things straight. Not all pedophiles are child molesters, that's one. And two, pedophilia is not a psychological aberration that can be easily tweaked. Many researchers have argued it's actually a fixed sexual orientation. This is an uncomfortable possibility for many to acknowledge, but the fact is that just as you hit a certain age and you knew that you were attracted to girls or boys or neither or both, pedophiles hit a certain age and they knew they were attracted to children. Like all sexual orientations, pedophilia is immutable and it's unlikely to change with medicine or therapy. Then she goes to, and she's going to make us feel really good about her friend. She really has like this guy who went to her bat mitzvah. Clearly, I don't know if she had a crush on him, but like this is her emotions are spent on him. She writes, there is no evidence, she admits, there is no evidence that child-sized sex bots or virtual child porn is any more effective as a means of curbing sexual desires towards children. But there's also no evidence that it isn't either. And we need to start thinking about pedophilia in a rational rather than an emotional light. When I first heard about Sam and the horrific things he did, I found it impossible to reconcile that shy, floppy-haired, razor-scooting 10-year-old that I knew with the 20-something bastion of evil that he'd become, and I wondered what kind of trauma he must have experienced in his youth for him to have become such a monster. But from reading the court documents, what I came to understand is that there was a third person. This person was the shy and underdeveloped for his age. This person wanted desperately to forge connections with anyone his own age, male or female, and he was intimate with both. This person was lonely. This person at one point realized that he had this feeling inside of him, and this person at another point made a terrible decision to act on it. And as horrible as this might sound, I don't feel anger towards him or even disgust. I just feel so incredibly sad for him and for all the little shy, floppy-haired boys like him who recognized this darkness inside of them and knew the futility of trying to make it go away. Ladies and gentlemen, that is E.J. Dixon, the young woman who called me and is now signaling to the public that it's my views that are problematic. It's my view. Why would people watch Candace Owens and her views? She's so problematic because she has an issue with Sigmund Freud. And no, actually, this is very problematic. This woman is a senior writer, okay? The senior writer for both New York Magazine and The Cut. Okay, she also has bylines in the New York Times and was apparently an unproblematic person for the New York Magazine and The Cut, okay? She doesn't hide her beliefs. She has this weird way, as I started going back through her work, of sort of fusing the topics of sex and children in her public persona. For example, when she was 7 months pregnant, okay? She opened up to The Cut about how she was suddenly really into watching, quote unquote, terrible gang bang porn. This is it. This is actually published in The Cut. E.J. Dixon found herself with the libido of a teenage boy, including a desire to watch hardcore pornography, the kind of terrifying gang bangs that she'd never seen or saw before. And by the way, this is the tip of the iceberg, because I just thought it was just too gross to keep going through the stuff that she promotes and the stuff that she says publicly. And I'm getting the feeling that it's really my staunch views against pedophilia. Even if a pedophile attended your bat mitzvah when he was young, that is what really upset her. I want to be clear, I could show you much more on that stuff, but the point of all of this is so that you understand that these are the people, these are the sorts of people, these are the morality, this is the morality that guides the people that write hit pieces. So whether they work for the CIA and they have no problem lying, whether they work for one of the CIA's satellite publishers and they have no issues lying, what they share in common is, in my view, just immorality. Like they are just happy to do and say whatever and feel nothing. And they always have this perverse relationship with the truth. Like they root for the bad guy. Again, nowhere in this piece she talked about his little sister again. It's just like, I feel really sad for Sam, not his little sister that he molested. Anyways, you guys, we have obtained the audio of Ari Emanuel, which we're going to get to. We also have to get to Trump slapping down Zelensky alongside J.D. Vance. It's really quite a show. But okay, first we should cover this update in the Blake Lively lawsuit. So you will remember, I think it was last week, we covered this absurd subpoena that was filed by Blake Lively's team. They were asking for basically every text message and every phone call for every person that they are suing dating back 2.5 years. It was a ridiculous request. They knew they were never going to get it. And I said, why would they do this? Why would they file something that is no court would ever grant in a million years? And I said, probably because you can literally go back. I predicted this. I said, probably they are going to do this because they think the public is stupid. And so when the judge come back and says no, they're going to go to the press and they're going to say, why doesn't Justin Baldoni want to give us every single communication and text message that he's ever had for the last 2.5 years? He must be hiding something. Like what? And guess what? That's exactly what happened. The judge slapped down that absurd request. And there's a little more nuance there and we'll get into it. But quite literally, this is what the spokesperson for Lively said. They said, quote, "What is Brian Friedman hiding?" That's what they said to Deadline after the ruling was made public. They continued, quote, after promising to release all the receipts, Friedman ran into court to keep secret the phone records of who Baldoni, Heath, Sarowitz, Nathan, Wallace, and Abel were calling during their retaliatory campaign. So instead of getting these records from the phone carriers the way that we initially requested, the judge has ruled that if we simply submit more specific requests, we will be able to get the records we are seeking. The spokesperson added, today we will do that, and we are submitting those requests directly to the defendants involved, and we look forward to seeing the records. I mean, it is weird how dumb they think the public is. Like, what do you mean? Why on earth would you be allowed to see every single message that someone has sent for 2.5 years, predating even the time frame that these people were their PR agents? What are you talking about? You're just looking for stuff so you can embarrass them, so you can know things about them. I would never in a million years be like, yeah, you can subpoena every single text message that I have with my sisters and my friends and my husband and whoever it is. Anyways, I'll take you through the judge's ruling because it is actually a kind of a split ruling, obviously very much in the favor of Justin Baldoni, but I'll tell you this so that you know what happens next. So Judge Lehman writes, Wayfarer Studios, Justin Baldoni and Jamie Heath moved to quash the subpoenas issued to their cellular providers, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. For the reasons following, the motion is granted in part and denied in part. Lively served the subpoenas on February 12, 2025. The subpoenas requested all documents concerning ingoing and outgoing calls or text messages related to telephone numbers belonging to Wayfarer parties and related individuals within the time period of December 1st, 2022 to the present, included but not limited to call logs, text logs, data logs, and cell site location information. She wants to know even where you were when you sent the text to your doctor about the rash on your child's buttocks. Like, that's what they essentially were asking for, okay? Now, the telephone numbers of the Wayfarer parties and related individuals are identified in the subpoenas. Then they say that what happens next was that on February 14th, the Wayfarer parties obviously came back and said no. They moved to squash it. And they said because what you're asking for is, quote, overly broad and invasive. So the court then ordered that they both meet and say, come back with something logical that you can agree to. After the parties conferred, Lively agreed to remove all documents and to remove the request for locational data and to clarify that the subpoenas seek only call logs and text logs that reflect non-content and numerical information regarding ingoing and outgoing text messages. The Wayfarer parties then came back and said, no, they shouldn't even have a right to that because some people are not involved at all in this lawsuit. Why don't you just request basically the numbers of people that are like our communications, but why would you have third parties? Why would you be able to see what's going on between them? And so the judge came back and he said, they objected to the fact of the phone numbers for anyone with whom they converse with. Lively argued that the purpose of those subpoenas is to lead to admissible evidence regarding communications, not only for the defendants, but among the larger network of individuals who perpetuated the untraceable campaign against Ms. Lively. Now, the judge came back and he said that the court must weigh the relevance of the probative value of the documents that were being sought against the privacy interests. And he felt that the subpoenas of the Wayfarer parties' phone records, even as Blake Lively had modified the request, did not meet those standards, that the request was overly intrusive and disproportionate to the needs of the case. And here's where it gets funny, because he says this. He says, even though Lively has narrowed her request to exclude the content of calls or messages, the phone records themselves will still contain sensitive information regarding doctors, psychologists, or even acquaintances. Lively has identified no means to segregate those numbers that may have some relevance to her case from numbers that would have no relevance to her case. And here's the biggest part. She mainly argues that the subpoenas will help her identify the larger network of individuals who perpetuated this campaign against her. But according to Lively's own complaint, this negative campaign did not begin until August of 2024. And then he cites her own filings and says, ma'am, you filed a lawsuit saying, quote, that the beginning of the plan to destroy Lively's reputation began in August of 2024. Now you're requesting to see everything dating back from 2022. He writes, it is therefore unclear how communications to and from Wayfarer parties in 2022 would reveal individuals who participated in the campaign. That is the kindest way that a judge can say to you that your lawyers are stupid. It's like he's like being nice here. He's like, your lawyers are really stupid because you guys started this lawsuit and you said that this campaign began in August 2024. And now you're suddenly asking me to see text message dating back to 2022. You are not able to hold a logical thought. But guess what? I, as a judge, I am able to hold a logical thought. So we're going to slap that down. You obviously cannot do that. You can, however, and this is where he grants them the request, you can, however, receive the communications regarding not just Wayfarer parties, but potentially third parties they were communicating with from that time of August 2024 going forward. So they're basically going to get 4 months of messages from August 2024 until December in 2020 of messages, including third parties. They felt that that was relevant, that she could, in fact, see who they're texting and who those individuals who they potentially could have been coordinating with that are not parties to the suit, as long as it is people that are mentioned in the suit. So she's mentioned some third-party individuals, like she mentioned Jed Wallace. He was not actually a party to the suit. Well, she will be able now to receive his messages for 4 months, to be able to see if phone calls took place for 4 months. And of course they did, because they hired him. So I don't know what they're going to be able to discern from those communications, but he has granted that order. So it's really a positive movement, I would say, obviously, for Justin Baldoni's team. They basically got everything they wanted, and they're just going to have to, which they were willing to do, comply with a limited scope subpoena. Okay, now we have to get to this leaked audio of Ari Emanuel and Freakonomics. Remember we showed you, I think it was yesterday, how they pretended that something happened with the audio and we don't know what it is. I now understand why it is that they did not want this audio to see the light of day. And you're going to hear something that Ari Emanuel says that is going to be extremely problematic for his clients, who he's quote unquote ride or die for. You're going to hear him say that. And yeah, it's definitely going into the lawsuit. It definitely proves the points that Justin Baldoni was hurt financially by what Blake Lively did with the rumors, and including with the New York Times, that he lost money and he lost opportunity. So this clip is rather long. It is 3 minutes. I feel like we should let you hear it in its entirety. My team cleaned it up. Again, it's a crappy audio. We cleaned it up the best that we could, so you might have to strain your ears a little bit. But here is Ari Emanuel on stage, the Freakonomics podcast. Take a listen.
I wonder if you could tell us about a little bit of a mess that I gather you've been involved in.
Oh, yeah.
I
know where you're going with this one.
Do you have notes on it?
Oh, yeah. Those are the two things I said to myself, this could come up.
Okay,
Listen out.
so I have to admit, I don't keep up that much on Hollywood. But even I caught wind of the Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds. Let the record show, for those listening at home, Ari just slit his throat.
I mean, it's like up. Bad situation that Baloney, whatever his name is doing. And it's horrible.
Now, he was your client too, until recently.
Yeah, until I fired him.
Right. You know, just give a little bit of the backstory.
It's not really fair. I've known Ryan and Blake for over a decade. They're really incredible people. In Hollywood, they have been incredibly successful. People work with them. They've never had any bad mojo up there and treated people badly. They kind of are charitable, could help them with their foundation. They've given tons of money away. If what is alleged in her lawsuit that happened on social media, just because she complained to the studio that things were unhealthy on the set, that he was director and this man was the producer, and they did to her what they're being alleged, they're really bad people. And Blake, I know Ryan. They're actually good people. Now, social media is a really good thing at times because it lets people, stars, connect with their fans. But these two guys used it in an evil way, if that's true. And we just have to be cognizant that you can root. And they should no longer be out there intimidating people, using social media now and trying to hurt them and using their what they have been doing prior to it now to go against them. They should just stop since they think they're innocent and let the process play itself out. These are good people that have been in the business for decades and have never had any bad press about them, and all the people they work with like them. And so, if it's true what they're saying in that allegation, these are two bad guys.
This concerns the making of a film where there's sex scenes and there's, I guess, what is called in Hollywood an intimacy coordinator.
They didn't have much English. And then they went after him on social media. It's disgusting.
Can I just say this is very juvenile, but when I first read that and I knew I was going to be talking to you, I was trying to picture like Ari Emanuel on set as an intimacy coordinator. Is that a role, a job maybe?
No, I mean,
Could do well?
It is actually not a joke. I mean, that's actually an important role. She felt that she was not being protected. She complained, and then these people tried to go after her. They should stop. And they're still trying to do it, and they should stop.
And what was your role? Did you fire him as a
I
fire?
fired them. I'm a ride or die. And they're good people.
Yeah. All right. I know you have a flight to get on. Do you want to tell us where you're going by any chance?
I'm going to the 50th anniversary of SNL. I can't wait.
So that last portion is the smoking gun. Don't forget that Justin Baldoni is alleging that he lost opportunities, that he was fired from WME because I told you, the rumors were, and I told you take it to the bank, that Ryan Reynolds went in there and said he wanted him dropped from WME, and somebody at WME who just outed himself made it happen. And that's Ari Emanuel, the CEO of WME, is now bragging that he dropped them. And he says his reason is because he's ride or die. Now, remember, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have already denied. They said, they had nothing to do with WME dropping him. This just proves that they lied. So Ari, in his maybe suffering from the same narcissistic condition as Ryan Reynolds, became braggadocious. He needed to be like, yeah, I'm so powerful, Justin Baldoni. And he just said too much. And this would have been why they would have realized that this tape was not a good idea for their legal strategy. Like, you can't play the victim and pretend you had nothing to do with him being fired and then be like, yeah, I fired them because he's ride or die as soon as I found out about it and they told me about it. Yeah, what you did directly led to the consequence of him losing a contract or of him being a client of the biggest agency in Hollywood, which is WME. So Ari Emanuel, like I said, even these billionaires just get real gutsy and they start acting like gangsters. He sounds like a gangster when he's talking, right? He has no respect for Baldoni, no respect for the process, and basically is saying everyone online needs to shut up. And we're not exactly shutting up, and we are following all of this. And obviously, if you are Brian Friedman and you see that this has leaked, you're like, yes, this is exactly what we needed. We needed to hear this audio, and there's now no way they can deny this claim. There's no way that this claim gets denied, that what they did hurt Justin Baldoni's career and hurt his reputation, because listen to what somebody with that much power is now saying, and he's saying it like it's true about Justin Baldoni. Like, I've known them for years, they wouldn't lie about this, and yeah, I don't like this guy, Baldoni. Yeah, he's hurt in Hollywood. He's blacklisted in Hollywood is effectively what something like that means.